Hello and welcome back. First off, I wanted to wish everyone in the US a happy US Thanksgiving. To Canadians, my fellow Canadians, we've got a lot to be jealous of. I will just flat out say it. American Thanksgiving beats the crap out of Canadian Thanksgiving. Canadians, if you want to understand what American Thanksgiving is like, basically it's the exact same thing as Canadian, except imagine if Canadian Thanksgiving had the level of enthusiasm behind it that was like maybe 3% less than Christmas. It also marks the countdown to the beginning of the Christmas countdown too. And to Americans, if you want to understand how Canadian Thanksgiving is, basically it's the same thing as American Thanksgiving, but with the level of enthusiasm of like an Easter, for example. Anyhow, so happy Thanksgiving, and on to today's video. So today I'm going to be talking about something that has bugged me for years, civil aspects and approaches to civil disobedience. So let's start off by talking about what civil means. We're going to break this down definitionally. So civil has two primary definitions. One is relating to ordinary citizens and their concerns, as distinct from military or ecclesiastical matters. So as an example, a civil war is a war between people within a country as opposed to between countries. The second primary definition means courteous and polite. Moving on, disobedience is defined as failure or refusal to obey rules or someone in authority. Straightforward enough. When we combine these two terms into civil disobedience, from Wikipedia, we get the following definition. Civil disobedience is the active, professed refusal of a citizen to obey certain laws, demands, orders, or commands of a government or any other authority. And by some definitions, civil disobedience has to be nonviolent in order to be called civil. Hence, civil disobedience is sometimes equated with personal protests or nonviolent resistance. In this video, I'm going to be arguing that some of what is passed off as civil disobedience is anything but civil and is certainly not peaceful nor nonviolent. So let's start off by giving two fairly recent examples of uncivil, not nonviolent, quote-unquote, civil disobedience. So first off, I'm going to be showing right now footage of Black Lives Matter protesters in California blocking a highway and roads for hours on end.
A number of protests around the nation in the wake of the Dallas ambush, including here in Southern California. Hundreds of people blocked traffic and rallied in Inglewood late last night, hoping to make their voices heard. CBS 2's Jasmine Veal shows us why police stayed back.
They chanted and danced in the street, keeping La Cienega and Manchester Boulevard in Inglewood shut down above the 405 freeway for hours.
Here's footage of the Canadian trucker convoy blocking the single most trafficked port of entry in all of North America, that between Windsor and Detroit.
Lock arms, no one's going nowhere.
Overnight, Canadian police trying to clear out this trucker-led protest blocking the Ambassador Bridge. The vital trade link between Detroit and Windsor, Canada, shut down for several days by protesters angry about vaccine mandates, bringing hundreds of millions of dollars of goods, especially auto industry supplies, to a standstill. GM, Ford, and Toyota forced to scale back operations as far south as Alabama. NBC's Cal Perry is there.
Since the beginning of this blockade, the messages from the government to the protesters has only become more forceful. Now with threats of up to a year in prison and a $100,000 fine. Probably not surprising when you consider that up until this week, this was the busiest land crossing in North America.
So what we see in both of these cases is people who clearly feel that it's okay for them to hold innocent bystanders hostage to their political demands. Now, is this civil? Well, by the first definition, i.e. pertaining to ordinary citizens and their concerns, yeah, it's civil. But this is a very broad conception. If one American robs another, that would be a civil interaction as it's between ordinary citizens. Now, it would also be criminal. But really, in this sense, civil really just means domestic. If a person were against laws opposing robbery, would not them robbing their neighbor as an act of protest be a case of civil disobedience? And really, if we're just talking about domestic disobedience, aren't we talking about any failure to comply within a country at all? Again, it's overly broad. So let's go to the other main definition of civil, which basically is courteous and polite. Clearly, preventing people from moving for hours or days until you get your political ransom is anything but courteous and civil. It's also not nonviolent. If I am blocking your ability to move where you want to, I'm engaging in an act of coercion against you. I'm imposing my will upon you. So what are your options here? Well, one is you can submit to me and just accept that until I decide otherwise, you are not permitted to do this thing that I have no right to stop you from doing in the first place. Your second option is to fight me. If I'm preventing you from moving and you wish to move, and I'm not listening to your requests or your demands to let you pass, what else can you do? And what's even worse is when we look at protest movements, you wouldn't just be fighting me. You'd probably be fighting me and 50 other allies who would jump to my defense immediately. So basically, I've created a situation here wherein either you have to subordinate to me or fight me, and probably not just me. So if this is non-violent, then wouldn't most robberies be non-violent too? It's after all you have to do is give the robber what they want and nobody gets hurt, right? Doesn't sound too compelling. So I'm saying we need to stop making excuses for these types of uncivil, civil disobedience. Protest, absolutely. It is critical to democracy, but you do not need to infringe upon the rights of others to make your statement. And I know this because me and organizations that I've been a part of did this for years. When I was an atheist, skeptic activist in Toronto, we regularly engaged in actual nonviolent acts of protest against things that we disagreed with. I can give a bunch of examples. We were stridently opposed to homeopathy. Now, did we go blocking entry into pharmacies that were selling homeopathic products? No. We did other things. We had public speaking events against homeopathy, explaining to people exactly what it is and how vacuous it is, both intellectually and literally. And when members of our group were feeling more theatrical, they would do public homeopathic overdoses, where a bunch of them would go in a public place and take a month or two's worth of homeopathic medicine in a gulp or two, just to show that these pills are empty. This was peaceful protest. We did not infringe upon anyone's ability to do anything. Our organizations were also against the public funding of the Catholic school system in the province of Ontario. Now, did we go blocking entry into Catholic schools? No. We actually took part in an interfaith and atheist united organization called the One School System Network, where we advocated against the public funding of the Catholic school system in that it is clearly non-secular. It is privileging one religion over all others, as well as every other way of living, every other philosophy. We sent letters to the editor. We wrote our political leaders. Our organization became, significant enough that we were able to get onto local TV a few times and have some of our leaders advocate for our position publicly. Those were the things we did, but we never infringed upon anyone's ability to do what they wanted to do. We were also against self-proclaimed psychics, con artists, essentially. Now, did we block entry into psychic events or block highways or do anything like that? No. Our members, rather, would stand outside of the events, handing out information packets, to those who wish to take them and talk to to those who wish to talk. We were against creationism and theism generally. Did we start blocking entry into churches and creationist speaking events? Not at all. Our members would attend these events. They did not disrupt them in any way, but rather would hand out info packets to those interested in taking them off of our hands, talk to people outside the event, and we would make comments and ask questions during the question and answer period. The single worst thing that any of us would ever do was laugh at an answer to a question or comment, or just a comment made that we thought was ridiculous. That was as bad as we got. We were also largely pro-choice, atheist community, back in 2006 or so, 8 maybe. Now, did we try and shut down pro-life student groups and speeches? No. In fact, our organizations did the exact opposite. One of the sister chapters of our overarching skeptic atheist organization, which was called Center for Inquiry, the York University campus in Toronto, their campus group was called SHAE, Secular Humanists at York. And their group, in collaboration with the Campus Crusade for Christ, was having a public debate somewhere around 2008 or so on abortion. Wherein a member of the York atheist group was advocating for pro-choice, and then a member of the Campus Crusade for Christ was advocating the pro-life position. Unfortunately, this event never got to happen because some feminist activists on the York campus successfully lobbied the university to ban the event from happening on the grounds that it was infringing upon human rights. What about the human rights to free speech, right? And I've never been more proud of a movement or a community that I was a part of than when I saw not just the York campus of our atheist skeptic group, but the national organization come and stand in defense of the Campus Crusade for Christ and their right to advocate pro-life positions. We did not in any way embrace shutting them down. We actually voiced opposition to shutting them down and encouraged letting them say what they want. That is integrity, absolutely. Now, some people will say protest isn't supposed to be convenient or comfortable. And this is very easy to say when you support the movement, that is protesting. But what if you don't? What if you're pro-choice and a bunch of pro-life activists start blocking highways? Are you going to defend them? And why shouldn't they go blocking the highways when they believe that they are fighting to stop murder? Right? Like, isn't that what Black Lives Matter was claiming to be doing? Right? Now, if you're pro-life, would you want pro-choice activists blocking your way for hours or days on end? If you're a proponent of ensuring that the less fortunate in society are guaranteed certain things, housing, food, education, healthcare, and the like, are you going to defend a libertarian group who is jamming up Ottawa to stop the theft that is taxation? I.e., that's how they view it, I should say. If you're a libertarian in America, are you going to defend a group of Medicare for All activists for holding you hostage to their demands to take your money to pay for someone else's health care? Is that something that you're going to be okay with? I could go on and on and on with examples just like these. And again, this is not against protest. As I said, protest is absolutely critical to democracy. If you can't protest, you're not in a democracy and you are not free. But you don't get to hold others hostage to your demands. What are you going to say when other groups start imposing its will on you? So, how can and should we protest when we think it is time to do so? There are so many things that can and should and have been done that do not infringe upon anyone else's ability to do their thing while you get your message out. You can organize marches and rallies so long as you let other people pass through as they wish. If your rally or march needs to block a road, make sure that, get a city permit, all that kind of stuff. And basically, but more importantly, make sure that there are other detour options so that people that are trying to get around that community have other options. You can march and camp on Parliament Hill. You can launch social media campaigns. You can reach out to your local political representatives, speak to the media, create your own media. You can hold speaker events. You can distribute and post flyers and posters. There are so many things that you can do to get your message across that do not step on the toes of others. If you're BLM, you can protest outside of police stations, courts, government offices, and so forth, though not blocking others' ability to get around or exercise their rights. If you're a Canadian trucker, you could have gone on strike, march on Parliament in Ottawa, launch big civil anti-government social campaigns, and so forth. Now, you may feel that your protest movement is so important that it justifies creating a major rights-infringing inconvenience for others, perhaps thousands or even millions of others, perhaps for hours, perhaps for days, perhaps for weeks. But just know that there are plenty of people who have opinions that you disagree with, that they hold with the same iron conviction that you hold your positions on, and they think they're just as important. So the idea is, don't go endorsing or defending protest methods that you would condemn if they were used against you. In this video, I've made a real effort, as I always do, to be as balanced as I could be. I express my concerns about when civil, quote-unquote, civil disobedience goes too far, and I cited two examples. One was Black Lives Matter, and one was the Canadian convoy. I am anti-Black Lives Matter myself. However, I'm also Canadian, I'm center-right, and I'm anti-vaccine mandate. I myself am triple vaccinated, but that was my decision for me. For probably close to 2 years, I was waiting for Canadians to start showing a backbone when it came to the draconian COVID policies happening up there. And then finally, the truckers arrived after nearly 2 years. Finally, some Canadians with balls, frankly. But I could not actively support them because they were doing things that if BLM or Antifa had done the same thing, I would have wanted the book thrown at them at 90 miles an hour. And if there are any Canadian Freedom Convoy supporters who have any problem with how I've presented things here, you're more, and same with BLM, anyone disagreements, you're more than welcome to comment. But to the convoy people, I just wanted to let you know that I actually made an effort to get a response to my concerns here. I posted it on a Canadian Convoy subreddit that had about 4,000 members expressing my concerns. My post was taken down by an administrator within hours. So definite acts of profiles and courage, and let it never be believed that censorship is only on one side of the aisle. But that's it for today's video. If you're interested in contentious issues but are tired of the one-sided discussions that you will find from most commentators on both sides, and even those pretending to be centrist like Tim Pool, subscribe and come back, because there will be more coming. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving.